most of the vandalism is in your territory. So how digital is the network? How modernized is it? Can you ever see a network of Karamoja at your control center? And what challenges are you facing, if any?
Thank you very much, moderator. Yeah, we have the widest network, which is mainly in rural area. Last year, but one, we commissioned the SCADA system, and we can able see and communicate both switching on and off, plus also routing different supplies from head office here. So at least all the major lines up to Karamoja, up to the border of Sudan, we can able see the lines, even the connection to Pakwach. So we can able see, do the switching, and interact with the network on a two-way basis. But the journey is still long and big ahead of us, because investing in these switch gears, it's fairly expensive. It needs more capital. So based on our analysis, we can able interact with the 42% of the would-be network that we desire. We need to take into consideration that the network, especially in rural areas, those are longer distance lines, over 120, 180 kilometers. And the infrastructure for the few roads which have been worked on, but most of the roads are maram. So if you don't have a better digitalized network, rectifying issues can become a problem. But at least there is some movement, and in our plan is to make sure that we invest some more money. But at the same time, on the side of the government, for any new line that come around through the electrification program, they should come with the package that makes them to be smart on the commissioning environment. That's the issue that we've designed to work with the electrification agency, and we believe it will work. But as I've said, you cannot digitalize the network without digitalizing the support system. I submit.
Okay, thank you. Umeme said they have 1 year to go. But tell us, are you going to hand over a smart network? We know that the net metering is going to affect you most, because it is going to be at medium voltage largely. What are some of the cybersecurity risks are you looking at, and how are you going to overcome them when this is effective? We shall see soon a net metering maybe by next year. So how are you looking at handling issues to do with cybersecurity and making sure you control and manage the network well in a smart way?
Thank you, moderator. My name is Alan Kamba, the head of Network Plant and Systems, sitting in for the CTO. Maybe to answer the first question, yes, we have made strides to digitize the network. Digitization has taken, I would say, a two-pronged approach, as indicated by the MD of UEDCL, around business processes, which he has ably discussed, but also around the grid. We have focused on substation availability and monitoring and control. I think we are seated at about 95% of the grid monitored and controlled. But the next level really is the inline equipment, transformers, and finally the meter. On the metering side, yes, we are procuring smart-ready meters, but there is need for the communication infrastructure, which still remains a bottleneck, to unlock, if I would say, that level of monitoring and control up to the customer end. But that said, with the proliferation of all these devices and communication equipment that is smart grid. The cyber security risks continue to evolve and manifest. I think we call it attack surface is increasing. For each of these devices, similar to the phones, they become a potential threat. The people using those devices, as indicated by my colleague, need training to be better secure. They need exposure. The devices need to be procured, specified, designed to take into account cyber security, because that's where we are seeing a lot of activity in terms of compromise. And these risks are with us. The risk they pose is safety. Imagine if a control center is compromised and we have teams working and the line is energized, we can lose lives. So the risks from a cybersecurity perspective are significant, affecting safety, affecting the operations, customer service if they switch off power, but also the assets that we manage, putting them at risk in terms of failure if they are operated wrongly. And so there's a need to assess the risks around cybersecurity. So as we modernize, as we digitize, it's important that from a design perspective, we take these issues into account, and also from an operations, maintenance, that everything we do with the equipment that exists, from a people perspective, even governance, policy, and regulation. I'm reliably informed that the regulator is reviewing the grid code with the goal of introducing cybersecurity requirements for the different utilities. So it's important that we look at it holistically to address the risk of cybersecurity, especially the people side. I think that's usually the starting point where if we do not address the training, the gaps, in terms of understanding how their actions can contribute to cybersecurity and exposure to different actors, we would be actually setting ourselves up. So from a cybersecurity perspective, there are significant risks that need to be taken into account, right from design, even procurement of the right equipment as well.
Okay, I think you are going to be at the center stage of ensuring that our net metering framework, as it rolls out, it has to be smart to ensure that the risks you are identifying are mitigated at the very design. At the ministry now, policy. I was looking at the policy document. I was trying to identify clearly which section talks about smart grids, talks about a modern network. Maybe you can highlight just from off-head which page in the policy document talks about a smart grid, about a modern grid, so that we know that at the policy level we are also thinking seriously about this. So otherwise, now that we are talking about this and the future, and especially the Rural Energy Department focuses on mini grids. What is the policy and how are we looking at modernizing mini grids into the future? But you will point out that section so that we take it into consideration here of our policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okoboy. Yes, my name is Edward Baleke, Prince Manager Officer, Electrical Supply, sitting in for the Commissioner for Electrification. In terms of our policies and how we look at moving into the future, expanding our grid and largely addressing the rural electrification aspects, the ministry has recently developed a national electrification strategy that looks at how do we achieve 100% access in the country. And we note that we'll be able to utilize both on-grid and off-grid interventions. And aligned to that is the aspect of mini-grids, which will play a key role in ensuring that we get there. Because we have about, statistics have been given today, about 19% on grid for now, and about 38% off grid. So in our energy policy 2023, we've captured aspects of mini grid. I don't recall the actual page, but we do have ensuring that we modernize the network, and we ensure that even as we delve into the off-grid systems, they also have to be constructed in tandem with the avenues and the technologies on the grid side. One key thing we are focusing on as we expand the network to the rural areas is the aspect of ensuring that we have standardization. In standardization, we are looking at aspects of ensuring that the planning, the regulation and guidelines, which comes with the financing for these verification schemes, is well aligned and tuned with what happens, for example, when the grid arrives in an area where you have a mini grid. Are the two networks able to communicate? When we're having mini grids and microgrids, are they able to connect and self-disconnect as and when required? The ability to operate in island mode is very critical, and this cannot happen without digitization. So we have, working of course with your regulator, we have in place regulations and guidelines for the respective mini grids, what happens when the grid arrives, ensuring that we are able to integrate the current technologies being deployed on the grid connected consumers, but also for the off-grid consumers. Over time, the costs for smart technology is going down, and it's projected that by 2030, we should be having the cost for per kilowatt hour, even for mini grids, reducing to be at par with the grid connection. Currently, it's about 35 cents per kilowatt hour, US dollars per kilowatt hour, 0.35. That should be able to come down so that it's at par. And once we are able to address the cost aspects and the standardization, we should be able to ensure that we take advantage of the respective aspects. Of course, we are aware of the aspects of data analytics. And as we embark on developing of our grid expansion master plan, we are keen to ensure that we leverage geospatial electrification planning. That's what the ministry is now looking at, so that we are able to target which respective households and areas and productive centers in the different areas and be able to deploy the right technologies. I'll stop there for now in the interest of time. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues here have answered to my satisfaction, but I believe you also have something to ask, and I will give you time to ask a few questions here and there. I believe now you have questions, but if you believe they have answered everything to your satisfaction, we can let them leave the podium. Let me hear from the minister. I believe he has something to ask. So, Honorable Minister, please, the mic.
Moderator, you asked a specific question where in the policy document we are talking about what was being discussed there. It's actually reflected in the policy document. Use of smart grids is actually emphasized across, right from transmission all the way to distribution. You refer to page 24 and 25 of the policy document, you'll get it there. Secondly, all of them have talked about smart grids. I want to take it to what do you get out of it. Yes, you'll get a notification of where it has happened. But in the case of vandalism, would want the control. What the smart grid is what you are talking about now is to inform you this has happened there. And usually there is a time lapse in the control. Is there any smart technology that can control the vandalism from happening? Otherwise, this one is giving you the information, and then you go, you take a long time to react. Vandalism has happened, and we have not controlled vandalism. Is there any way we can use the technologies to control vandalism? When you are advancing without even the human being around there, is there anything that can be done? Secondly, is there a way we can integrate to reduce the reaction time? You detect vandalism is going to happen, integrate it with the human response. Because I see that's very critical in the case of vandalism. And also, this also happens in the outages. If you sat in my house in the evening, you will see how many calls I get because of the outages. Despite these technologies, the outages take long to be fixed. Every day in my house, actually, power goes off, I will have to ring one of you. This has happened. And then the technician has to run. If we can integrate, see how the two can be collaborated to address the outages, the vandalism. Let's think about it. You may not have answers, or if you have, you give us those answers.
Honorable Minister, thank you for educating us about our policy. So the homework is that let us go back and read this policy and internalize it page by page. And the homework, you may answer, you may not need to answer, but it is our homework to take home and see how we can make this better. You don't need to answer to the minister's issues. We only need to work on it. So let's take a few other questions. Please.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Jesus Gavilan from the European Union. I have a question for the gentleman from UGTCL. My question is that over the last year we have seen that many independent power producers have been, developing power plants in the country, mainly thanks to the support of the Get Fit program. And looking into the review of the Electricity Act that allows for this direct sales of power from producers to end consumers, I mean, we should expect that more independent power producers invest in the country, no? So my question is, UGTCL has in place digital solution to ensure that the power produced by those IPPs is adequately managed and provide to end consumers without biggest interference, without any barriers or without any major issues. I think this is important if we really want to attract more investment to the country. So what are the digital solutions that UGTCL has in mind or has already put in place? I'm thinking about the National Dispatch Center is in place. It needs to be adapted to the new context. So that is my question. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe let's take more questions. Take note of the question to UETCO. I will just maybe paraphrase it a little, but let's take other questions first. Where are we? Oh,
thank you very much. I'm called Engineer John Bosco Koi Karisa. Mine is a concern. There are a lot of innovations happening all over the world and Uganda in particular. Even yesterday, we are looking at e-mobility. And we found out that one of the biggest challenges of e-mobility will be charging stations. And the presenters told us that where they have tried to put charging stations, power reliability is a very big problem. So and I was discussing also with somebody from Ruero Industries. They have a few factories there, but getting power, they have now decided to dedicate themselves on diesel-powered engines for purposes of running their plants. Meaning that there is a very big challenge for UDCL and all the other people in the sector. What are you doing to ensure that you integrate maybe with planning authority and all others in different sectors? Because as a source of electricity, you play a very big role in everything that happens. But how is planning aligned to your plans, the planning of the country, aligned to your plans so that you are able to provide power to all those innovations coming up? Thank you very much.
Okay, so can we, those are two questions, too many questions, so let's take a third one. Then can we have another final round? So let's take this last question, then we shall go to one final round. Please.
Thank you, moderator. Mine is very brief. David Otieno is my name, working for GIZ. Just one question that cuts across is whole, I mean, we all hear about vandalism and many other topics, challenges in the sector. Have you, in terms of digitalization, have you thought about artificial intelligence, for instance? Is it a topic in the wider concept of digitalization that you've worked with? Do you see any hope in that kind of helping some of the challenges that we see in the sector? Thank you.
Okay, so those are three questions, and maybe just to go to the one for UETCL, which was coming from the European Union. Is it talking about the islanding so that you are able to supply the local community as you traverse the country to take power to a substation? Maybe is that the kind of question, but you have it clear. Please, UETCL first.
Yes, thank you. From what I picked is the question is about how the power generated, probably somewhere deep in the countryside, is monitored and possibly managed to ensure a proper usage. It is actually a standard requirement in our power purchase agreements that these independent power producers install remote terminal units so that the respective plants can be monitored in terms of performance and availability. Some of them tend to go slow on this or skip it, but it is a requirement. As you have really observed, this is the only way we can really determine the performance of the plant, given a plant, determine its efficiency, and also ensure that losses are kept to the minimum. So that's why we made it a requirement, and it is standard in the PPAs. Thank you.
Okay, the other question was to talk of charging systems, power reliability. UEDCL and UMEME, please say something about it, but should be more of a bigger issue we should look at.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you for that question. Actually, the minister raised the issue of power reliability. The infrastructure that supplies power is like a vehicle. Any machine or any infrastructure can always be attacked by faults and failure. The question is, we who are supposed to give a service, what do we supposed to do? In a treaty with the network, there's what we call N-1, like a spare. When you're driving your car, you should have a spare tire. The purpose that if a tire gets a puncture, you remove the damaged one and put a spare tire to move. Now, in the infrastructure, N-1 means that if this network coming from side A gets a problem, I will automatically just switch to network from side B. That is the solution. In the modern world, they even have N-2 for some infrastructures which are very critical, security and airports, they have N-3 plus a local generator. Why? That if line 1 fails, they try line 2, they try line 3, they should all not fail. That's why in some of those countries, when power goes off, if it goes off anyway, except some few where there's already shading, but if it goes off, just blink of an eye, you get an alternative supply. So where am I coming from and what am I saying? We need to invest money such that at any time T, we have an alternative. Because the network, if it doesn't fail, you have to do servicing, and you can't do servicing on the live network. The technology that we have has not yet reached there. What we have to do is to switch off. But if it's attacked by fault, you should have an alternative supply. The few areas that have alternative supplies, they've achieved. But I can't rule it out that sometimes there are also delays arising from administrative means of our staff, of we who are managing this infrastructure to respond. There are issues of that nature. That's why my colleague can agree with me that however much you install a digital network, you also need to digitalize the support systems. Okay. Monitor your people and track them where they go from A to Z.
And the Umeme?
Yes, I'll concur with my colleague and add that on outage response, it's really the design, which is what he has mentioned, that you design the network for reliability. That is redundancies, that is alternative feeds. It must be designed with reliability in mind from the start. And in case of a fault, it's really around detection. How fast do you detect? How fast do you locate where the problem is? And how fast do you repair? And each of those detection is the digitization, and also location, because there are facilities that are available that can help you detect and locate. The restoration comes down to the people. Are they there on site? Are they the ability to repair in time? Issues of, I think, materials. He mentioned material management, availability, and other factors. So it's I would say, not just one issue. There are a couple of issues, but design, from a design perspective, and also the operate and maintain aspects need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. Of course, if you asked everyone here that if you called Umeme at midnight, would they come and do your line? That will be another question for another day. Are we thinking about AI? And is there any hope for using AI? Was a question from Otieno. And you, ETCO, just say something about that, and we'll go to the last round of questions. We have stayed on this so much.
Thank you. I think in the presentation I mentioned something about AI. It is one of the options we're exploring. We have not gone very far, but we feel it is something that can help us improve on this journey towards digitization of smart substations.
All right, so let's have...
I'll add something small on the artificial intelligence aspect. Artificial intelligence works with data. And what you're able to get out is as good as the data that you have. So in addition to all that is happening, we are starting to profile where all these incidences are happening. Once we have our data and the frequency in which they are happening, then we are able to optimize and be able to locate your resources optimally. Because it is a physical event, vandalism, targeting it with technology, you are able to see the after. But now we want to go to the preventive. So as we move towards the preventive, UTCL installed cameras some time back, and they were the first to be vandalized. So digitalization will play a key role, but first, we are profiling to ensure that all the data that is needed is there, and then we're able to locate our resources so that we can then move into a state where we are able to deploy additional machine learning and be able to tell in this community, in this area, usually lines are vandalized around this time of the year, around this period.
I know the
This is where we
engineers
should go
can talk a lot about machine learning, big data, AI, but I think we take it that they are looking at it critically. So let's watch out. We shall be seeing a large language modeling soon. We are run out of time, but it is not good manners to leave a question from a lady. So kindly allow me to request the lady to ask her question. Then we can leave this podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. Protocol observed. By names of Jonia from Ministry of Local Government. My issue here is about CAIP facilities. I know most all the government that is here knows about CAIP, the agro-processing facilities. Most of them are not working, they are not functioning because of the electricity. High voltage, people are not investing, they are finding a lot of, the high voltage where people are supposed to pay for that electricity so that they start working. So what is your thought about it?
Okay, I think that is an important question, and it goes into the planning issue, how you integrate one project from another ministry with another project from another ministry, and in this case, our case of energy. So maybe Engineer Baleke.
Thank you very much, moderator. The ministry, Honorable Minister talked about the new electricity access scale-up project, which is going to, among others, ensure that we extend power to productive centers and commercial areas. So we are working closely with the Ministry of Agriculture, but also will interact with the Ministry of Local Government to pick additional key load centers and productive areas that may be underserved as we speak of now, so that we are able to factor in extension of medium voltage and three-phase lines to those areas. So I'm going to be able to pick your contact and we forward that through. Thank you very much.
Okay, so colleagues, thank you very much for your presentations, and ladies and gentlemen, let us give a hand of applause to our team for their presentation. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to our moderator, Dr. Geoffrey Okoboy. Thank you very much, Dr. Geoffrey. All right, so our final session of the day, a lot of you are wondering, when you're talking about investment, is this a simple $100,000? Is it $200,000? But when you get to infrastructure, the discussion now moves into hundreds of millions of dollars. If you're talking about nuclear reactors, you're talking about $1 billion. Where do you find innovative financing for power infrastructure? So to address this challenge, please welcome with me Senior Investment Manager from UDB, James Otto. Big round of applause.
Thank you so much, MC. I know this is the last session and the energy levels are down. when I was coming here, I found a big section of the road was actually blocked because of the ongoing works. So if we keep you here for so long, the traffic is really going to be, it's going to affect you. But we have a very good session. Like we normally say, save the best for the last. Is it like that? So we are going to talk about money. And what are we going to talk about? First of all, how do we finance projects, these infrastructure projects that we are talking about, that we have been talking about, I think, from yesterday. We spoke about it in the morning today, and there is another activity going on tomorrow. How do we finance these projects? That is one. Number two, besides the conventional way of financing projects, where we are basically, government is borrowing and giving that money to UETCL, UEDCL, and all these other agencies, what are the other possibilities? What are the other avenues that we can actually raise money to finance these power projects? There are all these innovative ideas that are coming up, like PPPs. We have been talking about PPPs for a very long time. Things like IPPs, IPT, which is an emerging trend on how to attract private sector in the transmission space. Things to do with green finance, bonds, all these alternative ways of raising money. Where do we get them from? Can we actually use them in our power sector today? How do we de-risk projects? When someone gets a project and is trying to do feasibility studies, the idea is that at the end of the day, that project should be able to attract funding. But how do we know that after you have done your studies, that project is good enough to attract funding? How do we know that the lenders have got good appetite for this project? What kind of policies must we have in place so that we have a good basis, to attract funding? Now, to address all these questions and much more, we are going to have a very, 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 very rich panel. We have the EU in the building. We have Africa Development Bank in the building. We have GIZ in the building. We have Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization in the building. We have Ministry of Finance, the people that stamp in the building. So you cannot ask for a better panel than this. Now, to get us started, we are going to receive two simple presentations, just so that we are spiced up. We shall get a short presentation from UECCC, and then I will make a small presentation myself, and then I will call the panel to come in front so that we can ask them the questions that we have. My request is that please take note of all your questions so that in the interest of time, we can have the questions done at the end. So to kickstart it, I'm going to invite Mr. Roy Baguma. Can we have the presentation by Roy projected here? The presentation, that is the one from Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization. Yes, that one. Roy, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. To. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister and all participants, all protocol observed. My name is Roy Nyamutale Baguma, and I serve as the Director Transaction Execution with Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company. And I am going to take you through a presentation on our mandate and our activities, but also to share with you what we have been doing in terms of facilitating infrastructure projects in the energy sector. The outline of our presentation will cover the setup and mandate of Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, our vision, mission, objectives, and mode of operation. And then the second part of the presentation will cover our current programs and our new programs. So basically, Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company was established to address financing barriers affecting effective private sector participation in the renewable energy sector, and in order to facilitate meeting of government's capital investment goals for the private sector-driven electrification projects. And so UECCC is a government institution set up under the Companies Act as a company limited by guarantee and not having share capital, and primarily in place to facilitate investments in Uganda's renewable energy sector with a particular focus on enabling private sector participation. So we are in place to engage and pull in the private sector and use limited public resources to pull in private sector funding. Specifically, the company is in place to administer the Uganda Energy Capitalization Trust, which is a framework for pooling resources from the government and development partners and to channel the same to renewable energy projects. And we also work with various partners, including but not limited to development partners and financial institutions, to provide innovative financing options for renewable energy projects directed at reducing real or perceived risks faced by primary lenders and other financial intermediaries. I was reading on the screen. So our vision, what is our vision? Our vision is to be the leading provider of financing solutions and technical assistance to facilitate renewable energy development and access. And our mission is to play that public role and provide innovative financing initiatives and technical assistance that enables the private sector to participate in the renewable energy space and to enhance development and access of renewable energy. And so our key objective is to serve as a credit support institution to promote private sector-led renewable energy infrastructure development and to introduce into the Ugandan financial market new and innovative financing modalities, including credit enhancement instruments such as guarantees, technology risk guarantees, partial credit risk guarantees, and other guarantees that are supposed to address the risks associated with private sector engagement in renewable energy projects. And so altogether, we provide financial, technical, and other support to renewable energy projects in Uganda. So our mode of operation, we have two key partners. The first partnership is with financial institutions. And so our company provides an institutional framework to facilitate financial institutions in the financing of renewable energy projects through use of our limited public resources to leverage private sector capital in the financial sector. And so we have a menu of credit support instruments on business principles, delivered on business principles to financial institutions, to facilitate and to catalyze provision of credit for renewable energy within the local financial sector. To date, we have partnered with 18 financial institutions comprising of 6 commercial banks, 6 microfinance institutions, and 6 SACCOs. But we are going to scale up that number with financing from the World Bank under the Electricity Access Scale-Up Project, which I will also touch on in the course of this presentation. So now we are going to the menu of financing programs, and this one touches on the main topic here, which is power infrastructure. Sometime back in 2015, we identified that there was a financing gap, a challenge associated with connecting to the grid. We did a study in West Nile, and we identified that in the area served by Wenreco as a distributor, the poles were already laid out, but households and enterprises very near those poles could not easily access power. And the inhibiting factor was the upfront cost associated with connecting electricity, and basically paying the connection costs, matters around internal wiring. For those using diesel-operated systems, they needed conversion equipment. And so we came up with a facility in 2015, which we piloted in partnership with Centenary Bank and Wenreco. And the objective of that facility was to provide credit facilities for on-grid electricity connections. At that time, it was covering also the utility costs, the wiring of premises, poles, and 3-phase connections. But then thereafter, in 2017, government came up with the electricity connection policy, and that connection policy provides for a free connection, single pole, and no pole service. And so this facility that we have is in a position to provide for the wiring of premises, poles beyond the single and no pole, and 3-phase connections. And we have mainly partnered with Centenary Bank, and we have also developed a product there with their wide branch network. They have the Cente Power Loan, which is in place to address the challenge of connecting to on-grid electricity. And under the Electricity Access Scale-Up Project, this is a program which is going to be scaled up through more partnerships with financial institutions. And we're also in discussions with UEDCL to establish how we can facilitate 3-phase connections and recovery through the billing system. But this is in the formative stages. And so basically that is one way how our facilities have been able to unblock the barrier, the upfront cost barrier to connecting to on-grid electricity. And we have, at the bottom there is a commercial building in Nebi Town, and on the right there is a residential building in Koboko, which was connected by Wenreco through our support, which was channeled by Centenary Bank. Another area that we support, funds allowing, our model allows for us to mobilize resources from development partners to unblock barriers for project preparation. And we have previously implemented a KFW-funded early stage technical assistance program. And the purpose of this program was to develop, to help private sector developers to prepare feasibility studies for renewable energy projects. And it was 100% grant funding to the private sector developers based on the availability of a permit issued by ERA to undertake studies. And this covered pre-feasibility studies, business plan development, validation of key milestone studies, economic and financial modeling, market assessments, valuation of projects, and matchmaking services. And through this support, we enabled 8 local independent power producers with a generation capacity of 76.7 megawatts to conclude their early stage studies and secure international investors. The biggest challenge that we have is that the technical expertise is available and the sweat capital is also available. But we have local investors on one hand that do not have the capital to undertake feasibility studies for renewable energy projects because it is quite costly. And then on the other hand, you have international investors who are looking for projects. And so this is how we put together this technical assistance to be able to bridge that gap. And out of those 8 projects, 3 are already generating power and are connected to the grid. And I will show you in a later slide. Beyond the technical assistance that we provide for independent power producers, we also provide technical assistance to our key partners, financial institutions, and energy service companies. And this technical assistance framework is also going to be scaled up for financial institutions and energy service companies under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project, which I am also going to talk about. So, under our menu of instruments, we also support electrification through solar for households and commercial enterprises. And this solar program for end users, the objective of the facility is to address the affordability barrier posed by the initial upfront cost of acquiring solar systems by end users, including households, small and medium-sized enterprises, and institutions. And the implementation of this program will also continue under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project. We have some examples of beneficiaries there. We have a household in Arua using solar for lighting and TV. And we also have another household in Amuria district, which is using solar lanterns for lighting. And you can see that there is a mother there reading her Bible, and there is a son who is doing his homework. So at the micro level, we are able to facilitate access to lighting in the hard-to-reach areas. And in this case, we partnered through Nile Microfinance, which is a financial institution operating in Arua, and also with Tujijenge Microfinance, which is operating in Soroti. These are some of our participating financial institutions. Under the solar program, we activate both the demand side and the supply side. The demand side was in the previous slide, where we support end users to access upfront costs to acquire equipment, solar equipment. But we also support the energy service companies to access working capital. And so, partnering with our financial institutions, we are in a position to address the working capital challenges faced by energy service companies. As you can see there, we have some beneficiaries. We have a commercial container hosting a saloon, a shop, and a milling machine, all powered by solar. And one of the container shops is in Kiriandongo, using solar for commercial phone charging. And we also have a classroom at Canon Primary School in Kiriandongo refugee camp, using solar for lighting. And all the above systems were supplied by Power Trust, which accessed a working capital facility through one of our participating financial institutions. We have also piloted biogas financing for clean cooking. The objective of this, again, is to address the affordability barrier posed by the upfront cost of acquiring domestic biogas systems for cooking and also for lighting. And in this regard, we have installed biogas systems for demonstration and learning purposes. And so far, 38 demonstration systems have been installed in 18 districts. Arising out of that pilot, we are now scaling up under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project, and we are going to support financing for clean cooking solutions powered by liquefied petroleum gas, ethanol, solar, briquettes, and biogas. And we have a household there that was selected to demonstrate the use of a domestic biogas system. We have also started to finance biogas digesters through EBO financing, EBO SACCO in southwestern Uganda. The biogas requires raw material, which is the dung in abundance, and it normally works very well in the cattle corridors. We are still also targeting other technologies that can be able to generate sufficient and reliable gas from other forms of waste. So we now have our key impacts of our financing programs. In terms of catalyzing finance for renewable energy, we have enabled 18 local financial institutions to take on renewable energy lending as part of their day-to-day business with standalone renewable energy loan products. Being a financier, sometimes the financial institutions are a little bit apathetic when they don't understand the technology risks, but we have been able to bring on board 18, and we are going to scale that up under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project. Through our programs, we have been able to provide electricity through solar to over 1.4 million Ugandans that have accessed clean energy, and mainly obtaining financing through SACCOs and microfinance institutions, and through companies, energy service companies that have access to working capital and have provided financing through the pay-as-you-go business model to the end users. We have also been able to use government's limited resources to leverage private sector capital through the financial institutions and the energy service companies. The financial institutions deploy their resources beyond the credit facilities, which include marketing expenses, human resources, and their infrastructure such as the branch network and equipment to deliver the renewable energy financing. To date, we have deployed concessional funding of 29.7 billion through micro-lending facilities, and we have a leverage of about 28.2 billion that has been provided over and above our own financing. Through the scale up, we are expecting that leverage ratio will even go up even further beyond 1-to-1. And we talked about how we supported the early stage for infrastructure projects, where we supported 8 projects, and out of the 8, so far 3 have been commissioned, and we continue to follow up with the other developers. And now we are putting in place under the Electricity Access Scale-Up Project a results-based financing program, and this program will be able to deliver grants to address affordability constraints faced by end users, so price discounts for clean cooking solutions, for off-grid solar for households and commercial enterprises, for productive uses of energy, irrigation, refrigeration, cooling, milling, water heating, and also to address market entry barriers by energy service companies into unserved and underserved areas. So for these energy service companies that have been fearful of going into the rural areas, through this project we will be able to cost share the entry into difficult areas, including in refugee host districts. Yeah, I have talked about the results-based financing program. Under this electricity access scale-up project, we will also support productive uses financing and credit through participating financial institutions, and results-based grants will be delivered to energy service companies for financing on-grid and off-grid productive uses of energy, such as for solar irrigation, on-grid milling, off-grid milling equipment, water pumping stations, and water heating. And this is targeted at productive use of energy for income generation. And then under the same project, we will be the grant pass holder of capital grants, which are to be provided to the private sector energy companies, which are procured by the ministries of water, health and education, to supply and install and maintain standalone solar systems for selected public institutions, including public schools and health centers. We will also support institutional clean cooking for public institutions through the provision of grants to private sector players procured by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. And yeah, that's basically what we will be doing under the Electricity Access Scale-Up project. But in addition, we'll also provide technical assistance. We'll scale up provision of technical assistance to private sector institutions and energy service companies. For the clean cooking sector, which is still in its infancy, we will also provide technical assistance to help with these companies that are unable to meet the quality standards, international quality standards. And so there will be a program where we will be able to assist these companies to be able to meet those standards so that they can participate in the results-based financing program supported under the Scale-Up project. So that is the presentation basically on Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization, and I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Roy Baguma. Let's give him another round of applause, please. Okay, I'm going to do a very short presentation about UDB, what we are doing, and what we consider innovative. So just for the interest of everybody, UDB is owned by government. So we have Ministry of Finance as our shareholder. So this is something that is we all know. We do a lot of things as UDB. It's not just in the power infrastructure. We have a lot of interventions under agriculture, basically primary and agro-processing. We do a lot of things under manufacturing. We do a lot of things under human capital, education, and so many other things. But as you can see, what is in black there, what we call the enablers of production, that is where energy and infrastructure falls, and that is where the discussion for today will really focus. Additionally, we are also very keen about cross-cutting issues around climate change, around women, around youth, just to make sure that we bring them into the money economy. Specifically, what we do in the power sector, just to start, I think in the last 18 months, we have committed close to 200 billion just to support a lot of projects within this space. So you can see we are doing the entire value chain from generation, we have transmission, we have distribution, we have promoting access, we have energy efficiency, we have green financing. So essentially we do support a lot of activities within this space. Just to take you through briefly some of what we called innovative and what we have done. The first one is the electricity connection scheme. Some of you are probably aware of this because we launched this about 6 to 7 months ago together with ERA, who provided a lot of support, and they were really integral to this. Ministry of Energy itself. We have UMEME, we have Polia from UEDCL. So we sat and put our brains together and tried to come up with a solution to the issue of upfront cost of connection. Mr. Roy Baguma came here and presented an alternative approach that was launched in 2015. This was another one that was launched last year, probably actually this year. And the idea is that we have a lot of people that cannot afford to pay the 720,000 for them to be able to get the no-pole connection. So through this scheme, we managed through subsidy to bring that cost from 720 to 470, which made it easy for people to afford. Further to that, those that cannot afford to raise 470,000, we have a flexible payment option where they put 200,000 as upfront payment. UDB gives them through our partners 270,000 in a loan, which is interest subsidized. It is recoverable within a span of 8 years, and we recover this money by automatically deducting from your YACA. So every month you buy YACA, we cut off about 15%. I can tell you that within the short span that this scheme has been around, we have about 130,000 connections under both schemes. So you can see it's been very timely, and it's been one of the solutions that the sector needed. The other thing that we are also doing is something we call project preparation. We are aware that a lot of projects in the energy space are not bankable. So they are basically not investment ready, they cannot attract funding. So we put some money upfront to try and make these projects investment ready. As I talk now, we are working on projects amounting in excess of $60 million US, and we think within the next 12 months, these projects will be ready to attract funding. We also set up a special purpose vehicle, what we are calling the Climate Finance Facility, where we are crowding in a lot of funding, both domestically as well as from international partners, for projects that qualify to be called green. And essentially, these are the kinds of projects that we are talking about in this room. So these are just the 3 interventions that we have done within the power space. But there's a lot that we are doing within the other sectors that fall outside the discussion for today. Now, as we do all these interventions as UDB, we are very careful. We try to be prudent. We try to be responsible. We have a credit rating by Fitch. For those of you who know Fitch, they are based in the US, and they provide a rating on institutions. So we have a rating of B+, which is really the maximum rating you can get for an institution based in Uganda. So we were just limited by our location. We could have probably gotten a little bit higher than that. We also have a credit rating of AAA from GCF, another credit rating agency, which again shows you the kinds of view they're taking on us. In terms of sustainability, we are, I think, the first bank on the continent that received the sustainability rating, and we are among the top 5 globally to get this rating. That means that we take sustainability, both our sustainability as a bank, as well as the sustainability of our impact, very seriously. We have also received a rating from our peers, what we call the ADFI. These are the Association of Development Financial Institutions, and we have been ranked the best DFI, I think, for the past 6 years in a row on the continent by our peers. So it shows the kind of confidence they have in what we're doing. We have received so many awards in financial reporting, meaning that what we do report is really beyond what the market expects. Corporate excellence, and so many other things. These are just other corporate successes that we have reached as UDB. So this was just my presentation on the innovative financing. But I don't want to waste more time, so I'm going to start inviting the members of the panel. I will start with Engineer Tobias Karekao. Please, once I call somebody's name, you can clap for them as they walk here. From Africa Development Bank, we have Mr. David Otieno from GIZ. We have Mr. Paul Mwanja from Ministry of Finance. We have Mr. Roy Baguma from UECCC. Last but not least, we have Mr. Jesu Gavilan from EUD. I think we have enough seats. Gentlemen, I chose not to announce your titles and what you do. So I'm going to give you 1 minute just to tell us who you are and anything which is relevant for today before I can ask you the questions that are for you. We'll start. Mr. Baguma.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, my name is Roy Nyamutale Baguma, and I currently serve as the Director of Transaction Execution with Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company. I'm a development finance expert, having served with various financial institutions, development finance institutions, including East African Development Bank and PTA Bank. And I have been with UECCC since it started 12 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Thank you. My name is Engineer Tobias Kamukare Kaho. I can reasonably say I am the most senior in this sector because I joined the power sector in Uganda in 1977. Some of you weren't even born yet. Served in UEB, as I told you, I left UEB in 2001 after the restructuring, and my name has been around. Currently, I am serving with the African Development Bank, and we are looking at projects mainly in Uganda and Tanzania. I thank you very much.
1977 sounds familiar. My name is David Otieno. I work for GIZ, leading the energy and climate team. Although we are not a financial institution, as some of you mostly know, but we work very closely with all the financial institutions, some of them also on the panel, some not on the panel, and therefore we thought we could also bring in our experience from technical cooperation. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jesus Gavilan. I work as an energy program officer for the European Union delegation in Kampala. And I think I'm the most junior here sitting in this panel. I've been in Uganda for 2 years now, but I have more than 12 years experience in other countries working in the energy sector.
Thank you. My name's Paul Patrick Mwanja. I work with the Ministry of Finance as a commissioner, infrastructure and social services. I'm here to represent the PSST. I've been working at the Ministry of Finance for the last 23 years. And as we all know, the ministry is responsible for public finance management, and I believe it has a big role to play in aiding innovative financing.
Okay, let's give them another round of applause, please. David, I want to start with you. We have been talking about the problems that this sector faces. They're telling us that the installed capacity is below what they want, the transmission lines, the kilometers are less, access is below. So from the point of view of someone who sits as a financial institution of some sort, GIZ, where do you see the problems and where do you see the opportunities?
Thank you so much, moderator. And I think by virtue of having been here the whole day, following up the discussions, actually captured a number of challenges that came up. One that caught my ear was the amount of money. Was it the UEDCL or UTCL? One of them mentioned how much is needed per year. $120 million US per year is needed. And he also mentioned that all this cannot come from the private sector. We always talk about the solution being on the private sector, but he mentioned if at all the private sector would put in, then the tariff would be another issue. So we have a solution, but also problems coming in. The other thing was when policy was mentioned, the new energy policy. I think there has been, since we started working in the country as GIZ on these policy topics, this particular energy policy had attracted a lot of attention, not only from the stakeholders, but also from the highest level of government. And these actually led into a ramp up of the general capacity to almost 52 gigawatts. That tells you a lot on what needs to be done. I'm just trying to contextualize the challenge that is there. So basically it is already in the policy, and this is something that needs to be looked at. This large capacity, of course, requires enormous investments that we have to think definitely outside the box, because you need to expand transmissions, or leave alone the generation part, but also the transmission. You need to think about interconnectivity with the region, these cross-boundary connections. Apart from that, the network itself, the length of the networks, you have to definitely think about it. We've been just talking here about digitalization. That does not come without resources. It is money. We're talking about upgrading the systems, ensuring flexibility in the support of the digital technologies. We mentioned about artificial intelligence. Again, all these are just adding on to where the challenge is. And it's a big challenge. So investment needs is one of the biggest ones that we have to see. How do you deal with it? But also look at the Uganda's population. I mean, we were talking in yesterday's panel about the population growth in the country. We all know the percentage and how the population growth will impact a lot into the works that we're talking about here. So while delivering all this, you need to think about how do you then ensure that you have affordable, reliable, and modern clean energy for all as a target that is mentioned in our NDCs. This cannot, and this is something that I think is coming out clearly, cannot be met by public funds. I think public funds has, and the Honorable Minister is here, the challenge that the government would have is that the public funds that are available, not that there's no money, there is funds, but then you have a lot of competing national priorities. The Honorable Minister will tell you, how many people reach out to him for water, even though he's an energy minister, or even food, or even agriculture topics. So if you look at the competing national priorities for public spending, that means that public funds will never be enough. And then we have domestic capital markets that are too small. I mean, if you look at the country, Uganda, if you compare with many other countries, we still have a very small capital markets. And I'm sure my colleagues who are in the financing sector will probably touch on this. So basically all this, moderator, compounds onto a bigger problem. Something that, and I will end here because I could probably come back later, is to think outside the box. Outside the box does not mean things that are not known also to the parliament, the panelists here, but topics that we have been discussing with most of the partners here, as well as the Ministry of Finance. I'm happy that we have Ministry of Finance also on the panel, and that is the whole issue of the climate finance. Climate finance offers kind of a unique opportunity that we need to tap into. Now, the question has always been, how do we've tried, but it doesn't. They don't. They reject our proposals. How do we get the GCF funds into the country? How do we get the International Climate Initiative funds that were just announced 2 weeks ago? So there is a lot of funds out there, but the tapping onto it is the issue. I was talking yesterday to Stanbic Bank. I don't know whether the colleague is still here. They mentioned to me they have quite a huge portfolio, close to 1.5 billion US dollars, Centenary Bank. So there is, but capacity. So right now we are working closely, or we will be working closely with the Ministry of Finance, but also Ministry of Energy on capacity, building capacities on tapping into this climate finance. And I'll stop there, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think what is coming out is that on one side, we have all these opportunities. On the other side, we need to think outside the box. In addition to the public sector funding, can we look at ways of getting funding that is available in the climate space? But the big issue is, how do we get that money? How do we make the projects ready? How do we have internal capacity? So this is really the thing that we need to look at. Mr. Roy, public-private partnerships. This has really been the talk for a very long time, especially in the energy sector. What is your view? What is going on? Can we say that PPP is really going to be the solution to getting private sector investments to leverage on the funding that a government has. David was saying that the funding from government alone is inadequate, so that means we need to be able to complement it with other sources of funding. Let's look at PPPs.
Okay, thank you very much. Public-private partnerships are a well-established method of attracting finance to be able to undertake public sector investments. And definitely it is an area that we should be in a position to explore. It provides a number of benefits in that primarily it addresses the upfront cost barrier. Public debt, you don't have to increase public debt, and you basically provide the enabling environment, and you attract investors who are praised using a transparent method, and they bring in their capital and expertise. And the experience with well-prepared public-private partnership projects is that there is a lot of innovation brought in by the private sector in addition to the capital. Projects are delivered on time and with quality. And the main reason is the alignment that normally when the private sector invests, the understanding is that they will recoup their investment through operating that very investment that they have financed. And so you minimize cost overruns. There are very high chances of delivering within target. And also you are in a position to respond quickly to the demand for public services. The private sector will come in with efficiencies and will be able to deliver quickly, and you can be able to respond to the demand for the service delivery. And also there are benefits to the government in the sense that all parties are allocated the areas that they have strengths with, and at the end, after the concession period, government gets to retain the good assets that have been developed of a good quality nature, and also is in a position to continue using another model with the staff and the infrastructure that would have been improved over the concession period. So certainly, Mr. Mwanja is here, and I expect him to comment on how we can be able to leverage private sector funding through PPPs.
Thank you so much, Roy. I think what is coming out clearly is that the PPPs present an alternative avenue for us to be able to attract private funding to put in the poor infrastructure. Of course, the challenge is that the projects have to be identified, it has to be prepared, the risks have to be well allocated so that we don't have issues of costs. Then which begs the question, who is supposed to do this? And I imagine out of this meeting and out of this discussion, if there are projects that these agencies can earmark and they go through the process of preparing them so as to attract the private sector. Let's go to Mr. Gavilan. We have been talking about, he talked about that for us to attract the private sector, we need to have policies, we need to have good regulations. I know you are new in the sector, but you can draw your experience from where you were working before. Where do you think is the gap in terms of policies and regulations that is stopping private sector investments from coming into our sector?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's very interesting. I think we will all agree that investments depend on many factors. I mean, we cannot single out a particular one, but we need to see that a number of them are influencing the decision of potential investors. No, it comes to my mind the first one. I think is very important. No, the political and microeconomic.
Can you push your mic closer to you? Okay.
Yes, I was saying that the first aspect that came to my mind as an investor is the political and macroeconomic stability of a country. No, a very simple question. It is better to invest in DRC Congo or in Uganda or the USA. So political risk is very important. We need to understand how it works because it will determine what is the cost of borrowing or lending money for a particular investment. So this is the first point. Policies. What is the policy of a particular country to support that area of investment? I think this morning we have discussed largely about the policy aspects in Uganda, but this is very important. No? We need to understand if the government is deciding, for instance, to support renewable energy, or is the government decide to shift to nuclear energy, or is the government decide to sustain both kind of sources of energy. So that is very important. Another thing is that we need to think what are the let's say the tariff, if we talk about power, infrastructure investment, no? What is the tariff and the incentives, both fiscal and related to tax exemption, no? So this is very important. For instance, in Uganda, we have very good example on how addressing policy aspects, providing an adequate regulatory framework, we can achieve good result. And I was mentioning before the program Get Fit that has made possible to add 155 megawatts of renewable energy capacity to the country by bringing in the private sector, no? With some support from the development partners and the government. Also important, if we look into the investments in the country, we need to have an efficient licensing and an efficient procedures at the level of the administration. No, it costs time to developers, no, to get through all these requirements. And this is time, and time is money, and money at the end is going to be reflected possibly in the final tariff, no? And that is the end user that will pay, and that is a question of affordability, no? So we need efficient administration, efficient procedures, easy licensing. And finally, we need to look into the private sector. The private sector has to be an ally. It's not an enemy. No, we know that the needs to address, the issues of or bring access for all in the country is very expensive, it's very costly, and we need to bring everybody to the table. And of course, the private sector there play an important role. I mean, our colleague from the African Development Bank has already mentioned that. So that are elements that we need to look into that. But then if we look really into innovative financing, I think my colleague David has already given some ideas. I think we need to tap more into the new opportunities that is offering the market. For instance, credit carbons, carbon credit. This is something that need to be explored in a country like Uganda. For instance, in Kenya, the government is quickly moving because there is a potential there. And they have estimated into $600 million of annual carbon credits in Kenya. No? So probably Uganda, I don't know if it's at that very level, but it shouldn't be far away. No? And then I think from the development partners' perspective, I think we are bringing a new solution to that problem. From the European Union side, I can mention what we call the European Sustainable Fund for Development Guarantees. This is a big package that intend to cover the risk associated to investment outside Europe, in Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa, but also in Latin America. And this is a package that the European Union is making available for all the financial institutions to take the risk to invest in power infrastructure, in renewable energy, in climate action in countries like Uganda. And we really look forward to, to work with local partners to see how we can, mobilize those guarantees. And then I think I will stop here to leave a bit of time for the rest of panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, again, we see some cross-cutting ideas coming up here. Can we tap into the climate finance space? There's a lot of funding there. It's talking about, can we look into carbon credit market? There is funding there. Can we attract lenders from Europe and then under the arrangement of guarantees? So we are looking at innovative instruments like guarantees. But there is something you also mentioned, that government policies and regulations affect the cost of credit. So if we don't have good regulations in place, lenders are going to factor that when they're giving you their pricing. Let's go to Paul. Paul, lenders fear risks. The reason why they never really come to fund these projects is because they think these projects are risky. Now, from where you sit in Ministry of Finance, you're a big borrower yourself. What advice do you give around risk and mitigating risks so that we're able to get more funding to invest in this space?
Thank you very much for this question. Risk is the effect of uncertainty on the strategic objectives of an entity. And in this regard, the International Organization of Standardization has set in place guidelines for risk management. I think it's ISO 31000. And this guidance is critical in helping government managing risks. The starting point is for you to be able to identify the risks. In the case of projects, you must be clear of the results or objectives that you want to attain. And in the case of our government, we have a hierarchy of objectives for each project, starting from the project goal, the project outcomes, the outputs, and activities. And at each level of those results, you're expected to know the assumptions that must hold for the objectives to be achieved, and those present as the risk mapping. After you identify the risks, you must assess them to understand the likely impact of each risk and the likelihood. And that ranking then gives you an idea of how best to mitigate those risks. So in the case of government, when we are borrowing, our objective is to borrow at the least possible cost. And when you come to energy policy, I think the worry is on the tariff. So if you look at those objectives, the number of risks that we come face to face with, you could talk of interest risk, you could talk of foreign exchange risks, you could talk of refinancing risks, you could talk of demand risks, construction risks, and so on. So to provide assurances to our financiers and borrowers, we have financing instruments, risk mitigating instruments that we rely on. If you're dealing with interest risk, you could relying on hedging, but this is not an instrument that government is keen on because of associated risks. So because government is the biggest economic agent in the economy, and when it enters the domestic money markets, it impacts on interest rates, we must provide assurances to financiers that the government is acting in a responsible manner. And we have in place the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility, which is an agreement between Parliament and the Executive on how we intend to manage the economy. And there are fiscal rules that are set in there. There is a limit on the borrowing that government will undertake, which has been set at 50% of GDP. There is also a limit on the fiscal deficit. These rules are set to ensure that government operations do not undermine macroeconomic stability. In regard to foreign exchange risk, the key guidance to project managers is to try and to government essentially is to try and manage your loan portfolio in line with the currency within which the projects are supposed to earn resources. So in terms of refinancing risk, you want to diversify your portfolio, ensure that your maturities are balanced between short-term and long-term. And in regard to projects, we provide assurances by ensuring that projects are well prepared. So we have an institutional arrangement where we have the development committee to act as a gatekeeper to ensure that project studies are undertaken and they are credible. We have the PPP unit that deals with PPP projects, which are an important source of alternative financing. And then we also have the climate financing unit to tap into the opportunities that are arising out of climate financing, such as carbon credit market and so on. I wish to stop there for now.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, engineer, you've been in this sector from 1977. You've seen how this sector has been evolving, and as the sector evolves, the way we fund this sector also evolves. Looking into the future, I don't know how many years from now, where do you see the sector looking like, and how is that going to affect the way that the sector will attract funding?
Thank you very much. Yes, I think I've been around long enough to see the first set of reforms, and now I'm glad I'm seeing the second set of reforms. That's great. Let's deal with the knowns. The days when public finance exclusively handled infrastructure development are long gone. They are long gone. There is no possibility that through Ministry of Finance, Consolidated Fund, you can fund these projects. That's a fact. The second known is that, fortunately, sometimes when there is a problem, there is a solution. Private sector finance has grown. And that's why we are talking about PPPP. That's a fact. Fact number 3. Private sector also has very sharp eyes. Private sector will invest, I'm sorry, not cause a foreign country risk assessment, but we know too well that some countries are very fragile, like Somalia. They are investors there. People talk of DRC. They are investors there. The issue is, at what cost? At what cost do you get this money? So the quickest source of finance is risk management. The moment you manage your risk profile, you will attract funds very easily. What is one of the ways that you can handle? Of course, political is very important. I'm glad the Honorable Minister is here. That is for him to deal with. But let's see what we can deal with at our level. One of them is, again, it's political, but it is through regional cooperation. It's amazing how much we can benefit if we develop these projects from a regional perspective as opposed to a country perspective. No wonder someone who leads this country has been talking of Pan-Africanism. The moment you have countries working together. Yesterday, we were talking of overcapacity. Whether true or not true, because it depends on whom you talk to. But the quickest way to deal with that overcapacity, if it is there, would be through regional interconnectors. So, and the quickest way to develop big projects, that's why the Ingas of this world have remained stalled. The quickest way to develop these big projects is through regional cooperation. Because countries, when God was planning this earth, he gave us different resources. Some countries are more endowed than others. Why Ethiopia has been able to develop this and why it is looking aggressively down, the Grand Renaissance Dam, because it is hoping to tap into the East African region and South Africa. So, Honorable Minister, sir, one of the messages I would want to give you, if you are talking about innovative financing, is looking at the regional end, as opposed to looking at Uganda. I do appreciate. Good enough, I grew up from a village. I know what ruralification means. I sometimes have a difficulty with that word, universal access. I understand it. But as to whether everybody in my village can have electricity and then pay for it is another matter. All those are risks. The private sector won't go there. They can go there, but if they go there, at what cost? So, one of the quickest ways that really I would want to share in this forum, because there are many things we can talk about, but I think we are limited with time. But one of the aspects that I would really want to leave on this floor is the question of regional cooperation. Let us not just look at Uganda power sector. Let us look outside the country and thereby lower the risk. And the moment we lower the risk, it will be easy as to get cheap finance, which then we can use. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer. Let's give a round of applause to the panelists. We are going to take some questions, but we shall limit the questions in the interest of time. I don't know what's the mic. So do we have...
Yes, the mic is available.
Okay. If you have questions for the panelists, please raise your... we have somebody. Please, okay.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, speakers, delegates present, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Mutamba. I'm the Deputy Chief Engineer, Ruwero Industries, and National Enterprise Corporation, a financial arm of UPDF. I'm stationed in Nakasongola. Our issue is mainly power at Nakasongola. The issues of power, they range from instability, insufficient, and unreliable. I am not so sure if Engineer Abaddon Atwin is still here, because he is the gentleman who has visited us recently, and we took him around and showed him the impact of the problems of power that you are facing. The challenges are so high in such a way that actually, like for the last 5 or so years, there are some processes we are running on a generator fully because of the problems of power we are having. If I am to run through the problems we are having, it will take us some days here. So in summary, I am sure that the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, it already knows that the challenges we are having as the Ministry of Defense in supporting the projects for the state. The challenges mainly that the ministry told us, it is financing. In case there is anybody here from the Ministry of Energy, I think there is Engineer David Kaija. I don't know if you are still here. If you are here, may you kindly let us know who could be our savior among the panelists so that he can give us some light. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's a nice question. Let's take another one.
Greetings, everybody. All protocol observed. My name is Ronnie Ogwang. I'm an electrical engineer representing Sunnyside Renewable Energy Services. My question is open. Any of the panelists can take it up. I would like to inquire about the availability or unavailability of sovereign guarantees for some of these infrastructure projects that we're looking at, because some investors, like the investor group I represent, are so interested in sovereign guarantees if they're going to finance projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take a question from David, UGCL.
Thank you, James Otto. Thank you, panel. My question is a simple one. You know, we're looking at innovative ways of financing, but I want to ask the panel, have we thought of enabling agencies or the service providers to harness internal resources? You get it? In order for them to actually to be able to contribute to these investment needs. I'm just saying from a point of view of, for example, UEGCL, by the way, I'm called David Singoma. I'm in charge of strategy and business development and electricity generation. But I'm saying, can't we enable these agencies have some retained earnings or some return on their assets or investment so that they can actually finance future investments? Why should we always look for outsiders? These entities should be allowed to actually harness some internal resources so that they can invest for the future. Yes, we can leverage and we can supplement the funding with external funding, but we should first look in-house before we look outside. So I'm just saying maybe the panel could give a comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for suggesting another alternative way of financing. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to ask I think you were pinned out. I don't know whether you want to respond to the first question. Okay, yes, no answers. Let's have someone volunteer. I think, engineer, can you talk about the guarantees, the sovereign guarantees?
Minister of Finance is the best placed to answer that. I have the answer, but it's best.
Okay, let's go to Minister of Finance.
Sovereign guarantees are a contingent liability on our country, in the sense that if given and the beneficiary fails to honor his or her loan obligations, that liability would come onto the government balance sheet. For that reason, they are highly regulated and require approval of both Cabinet and Parliament. So it's possible, but highly unlikely because of the possible impact on our country's debt obligations. I thank you.
Thank you. Roy, can you provide a view on, can we have these agencies, UEGCL, UETCL, UEDCL, retain some of the profits so that they can reinvest instead of them going out to borrow?
I think we have Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development officials. They are in a better position to answer that question. Yeah, I would like to request maybe Engineer Kalanzi can help us, or Cecilia, and even the minister is here. Yeah.
Engineer Kalanzi, you've been given the honors to answer the question.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know whether I got the question properly, but it's a matter of policy, and all of us know that issues to do with financing and how money is handled, it means for finance, all money goes to the consolidated fund, collected together as a group, and then of course, as the engineer mentioned, we are going into the second set of reforms where all the utilities are going to be combined into one company. So those are some of the issues that will be looked at as a single equation for a solution. But the way government collects money as a unit, that is not changing anytime soon. Unless Minister of Finance is saying otherwise. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, engineer. Let me just summarize, and then we can call our session done. So the things that came out for the interest of everybody, the first one is that let's explore climate financing. That is one. Number two, let's try and prepare the projects. So once you have a project as an agency, please make sure that you prepare these projects first to attract funding. Number 3, let's look at PPPs as an avenue to attract private sector. Number 4, which is very critical, is risk. Let's look at the risking instruments because of the implication it has on attracting funding. Number 5, whereas we are relying so much on public sector funding, let's look at alternatives. I like the way engineer put it, that the days of public sector funding as the only way of funding infrastructure projects are long gone. So let's try and shift to the trend. Number 7, regional integration. Let's look at projects from a regional standpoint because it manages so many risks, risk of demand plus others. Last but not least is, again, the issue which came from David. Can we look at options around retained earnings as a way of financing projects? I think I want to close this session. Again, let's give another round of applause to the panelists as they go back and take their seats.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to all of our panelists. It was what they call quite an exciting day. And there's so much information which I think was shared, and a lot of people are wondering, how am I going to be able to process all of this? So fortunately for us, we have somebody who is a very gifted electrical engineer. He works with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, and at the same time, is gifted in not just English, but also Chinese. Please welcome Energy Officer in the Electrical Power Department, David Kaija, to give us an assessment of what has transpired during the day. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister, honorable guests, and all stakeholders. I would like to thank you for being with us for this Power Forum, and we're just going to do a brief wrap-up so that we can see as the way we started the day is the way we can finish the day very effectively. We started the day off by our dear MC making sure to tell us that this was more of a networking event where we should gather contacts with all other people around to be able to engage them and talk about different things. The key issues from session 1. Session 1 was more about sustainable energy mix. We had 2 different presentations on energy transition plan and the electricity generation strategy. We remember mentioning that harmonization and synchronization of the energy transition plan so that developments can take place in an effective way and delivered to the citizens very well. Generation plants providing electricity supply that will create demand in different situations, like at Karuma, where there was a data center that has decided to apply to be built near Karuma because there's electricity already available. Clean cooking technology as a way of managing the demand side and energy efficiency. For demand side management, improving the supply and making sure infrastructure reaches to the rural areas. And as a major contribution to the energy generation plan, the nuclear energy is supposed to, by 2040, is supposed to be able to put about 24,000 megawatts on the grid. In the second session, we're talking about policy regulation. Different policies, as you know about the Electricity Amendment Act of 2022, where the monopolies for almost all the sectors were removed with introduction of even an IPT model, that's the independent power transmitter model, and allowing generating plants to sell electricity directly to the end consumer or transmitters to sell directly to an end consumer. We can take advantage of all this and increase the economies of scale. How do you increase the economies of scale? By improving demand. So if you're selling electricity to, let's say, 10 million people, it will be cheaper than selling to just 1 million people because of economies of scale. These new connections are supposed to be funded by that new electricity access scale-up project, which, with support from World Bank of Uganda and World Bank and Government of Uganda, to the tune of $638 million, is going to increase the number of connections on the grid. In the next session, in session 3, where we're talking about smart grids and digitalization and modernization of the grids, we had UETCL is already operating a smart grid at about 60%, and UEDCL, as per the MD, is at about 45%. This, they said they're looking to improve with more funding to be able to install more better equipment in the distribution substations. Umeme, which already has a very efficient SCADA system, has its substations already 95% remote controlled, and we're looking forward to a smooth transfer of the Umeme concession to UEDCL. Digitalization of support services. As we digitalize the smart grid, the physical smart grid and software, we need to make sure we digitalize also the support services. These are things like the employee performance reviews, asset monitoring, maybe the systems, the payment systems we use, which are already smart. All those need to be digitalized. Then also incorporating artificial intelligence into the network, which UETCL said they're already looking into, and looking into the future for that. Monitoring networks to prevent vandalism. We talked about this in terms of the fiber optic that's already installed on the UETCL transmission network, which can be used to monitor to do real-time monitoring. In case someone hits some tower somewhere, in real time somewhere at a control center, it can be notified. In the next session, which was about innovative financing for power infrastructure, we've been looking at different ways of getting financing into the power sector, because as we all know, to achieve our goals, our 2040 goals, we need about $3.84 billion. And all this can come through not only just government funding, but different methods like public-private partnerships. We have the hybrid electricity connection that's already being undertaken by UECCC and UDB. We can do renewable energy financing, results-based financing. I know at least of one in northern Uganda where they are funding solar batteries, which charge phones and lights. Climate action programs attract better financing terms and better conditions. So we should look into that and involve them into our programs as we are doing different projects and programs. Then attracting external financiers. We've just talked about regional integration. For example, a project that would be integrating maybe the DRC and Uganda is more attractive to external financing than one that is just rural electrification within Uganda. So we need to also be looking into that for the future. Then different government policies that the ministry has been encouraged to look into that maybe may affect the cost of credit in our country. With that being said, we've had a very fruitful Power Forum, and we thank you all for attending. We hope you've taken something from it, and we thank you all for your attendance. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for a very finite presentation. It's my pleasure now, ladies and gentlemen, to give us closing remarks. We'd like to call Engineer Cecilia Menya to come and give us just her overview of today's proceedings. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Thank you, MC. At this point, I would really like to thank you all for being with us up to this point in time. I would like to thank all the moderators, our panelists, and my team, my staff that has been part of the organization, or the ministry team. It has been really fruitful, and what has been presented by the Secretariat is just brief, but we've really captured a lot more than that. They had more than 10 pages. I told them to please reduce for this purpose of wrapping up, but we've noted all the key issues that we've discussed here, and these we are going to look back on, and they are going to enrich our plans and activities in the ministry. We are very grateful for the fruitful discussions we've had here. But at this point, I would really want to thank our minister that has been with us the whole day. And it is usually unusual. They come in at the beginning, open, and leave us. But he has been with us. He's very interested in the discussions that we've had here. I haven't seen him nodding. We've been discussing on that table on various issues. So we are really grateful, Honorable Okasai, for being with us throughout the day. And at this point in time, I would like to invite you to address us and close this Power Forum.
I would wish to address you as partners. You know what? I enjoy discussions of a technical nature. I may be a politician, but that politics is new in my life. I actually enjoy the technical part of my life. So when I sit in such a forum, it is simple to forget politics and actually get absorbed in the type of discussion which we have gone through. I'll start by thanking all of you participants for actually keeping awake all this time. And the summary of what we discussed actually is an evidence that we have put a lot of thought to what we are doing. In the course of the discussion, I actually was noting things. And I tried at times to jump in to talk about it. I actually noticed a mismatch of some of the plans. And mismatch, we are talking as a team, but we would be talking on a slight variance. And that actually requires an internal, we look internally to ourselves. How can we improve the harmony of the presentation? This takes me back to the theme of the day, collaboration. Getting focused to work. And we have demonstrated this is possible. All of us have same interests in this. Whether you are from the private sector, the partners, the ministry, the public sector. And I sat here because I also wanted to see how the policy can actually be brought to guide the process. I also noted some of the key things, the challenges, and those challenges which were identified here need a critical look into it. And the presentation which Dr. Banaga made seemed to be a rallying presentation. To me, it is something which is ongoing. And if all of us collaborated to have an input into what he was presenting, the mismatch and also a clear way forward would actually be brought for this country. So I noted that. The panel discussions were enriching. It enabled us to get different views collectively. The last one is what kept me actually seated here, because I wanted to understand. Because the biggest elephant in the house was financing. Beautiful policies, beautiful strategies, but at the end of it, how do we implement it? All of them require huge amounts of money. So I was keenly interested in listening, how can that huge financing, the billions of dollars which were reflected even in the policy, how can they be mobilized? And I liked the discussion of that last group, because they sort of brought out how we can have that innovative financing brought into the sector. It is something that we should reflect a little bit more because of its importance. Everything that we do, we need money for it. And all of us in this room, if we put our heads, and not only heads together, thinking, but also put some financing. I see the banks here, UDC, African Development Bank, represented by the longest serving engineer in the sector. The European Union, GIZ, government of Uganda, not forgetting the private sector, and even the media. The media, you have a big role creating awareness on the magnitude of the challenges that we have in the sector. I have gained personally, and all of us have gained, valuable insights into the energy sector. We are not going back the way we came here. We are going back richer, but thinking of the way forward together. Vandalism is something that we have got to continue reflecting on. As I was seated there, after I asked that question and I got an answer, we seem to have got closer to a solution. But we are not yet there. When I was seated there and then I discussed with my neighbor, you know, a long time I was working in control of pests and would put something that would make an alarm as soon as a pest bites a crop. Some of these, like if it is a bird, and then as they land into a field, and then there's a scream, it scares the bird. I saw in the presentation of UEDC, and then transmission, where you can, there was that picture of somebody getting close. And in my mind I said, could there be a mechanism, a scare mechanism, as you get close to electricity infrastructure? A scare mechanism, which can again be controlled through the technology. I was just imagining, what about if using electricity itself, as somebody gets close to a high voltage line, automatically there is increased power around that area. Somebody feels a slight shock. I was just thinking, what about if we integrated, as you get closer, there is a trigger of an alarm or something sounding like a bomb blast. Somebody would just run off. Because detections, so far we are going to detect where it is happening, but our action is a post-mortem because you cannot be there instantly. We have got to think an instant reaction to scare somebody who is approaching the infrastructure. I'm not a technician in that area, but you are the engineers. Let's think about it. Instead of addressing a post-mortem, you detect, then 2 days you go to the site, it has happened. That was what I was imagining when I was seated there. Unreliable power has been discussed here. That one also is a big challenge which we must think about. The last question which was asked by Luero Industries, unreliable power. We have said as a ministry we should go to clean energy. But when it talks of going back to generators, we're actually promoting unclean energy using generators, carbon emissions. I'm taking keen interest in that one, and I actually thought when I was sitting there, if we are to demonstrate that we are moving to clean energy, this should be a starting point for the ministry working together. NEC and the ministry are government institutions. Collaboratively, can't we do something to rectify that energy? But I'm also aware it's a matter of time. There is a transmission line which is being constructed specifically to Luero Industries. And I think when that one is completed, it will provide a solution. So don't lament and give up. There is hope. So now transmission, take note of it and see how we fast track the construction of that transmission line. I wanted to encourage all of you, including myself, to strengthen the collaboration. When we sound an alarm that we are developing a strategy like what we are doing now, please come in and enrich it. We need you there. When we were in Sheraton just last week, I actually gave a directive. Banaga tried to talk about it here. I'm that person who is keen in getting work done. When I led a delegation with International Energy Agency, I was with my technical team. And we're thinking we must come up with that strategy. And there was partnership. I started by matching everybody. They brought a delegation of 20 people to work here, and I wanted our team to. When I went with them, I actually told them, we are not boarding the same plane with me. You can write to the PA, so I will deliver the message, I've left you here to work until you come with the first draft. And they stayed there for 2 weeks, and they came up with a draft. I was keenly interested. I had to read it. And I gave my guidance on what I wanted. And even last Friday, I told them that's not good enough. When a big gathering like this was there, and I told them it is now this is a starting point. You have developed a framework for me. That's not what I want. I want a strategy which will cause investment. And when the last team was saying develop projects, and I was actually saying that is a final end that I want. I want investment plans, detailed investment plans. And I actually don't fear bringing very expensive investment plans. So long as it is well written, we shall always get a resource. We set up priorities. What can we do today? What can we do next year? Government following those development plans. We can bring ours, which is good, but prioritize what is for these 5 years. But what can we do after that? 10, 15-year development plans for the sector, but we do prioritization as we move along, and we shall be there over time. So our discussions have been fruitful. I wish to thank you very much for staying put from morning up to this time. I also note the work which the technical team did before we came here. The panelists must have done some reading before they came here. The time was limited, but I know you have more information than what the time allowed you to present. We are interested in the information which you have taken back. In the future, I will ask for summary write-ups of those. In case time catches you, you deposit that, what you intended to do, we go to analyze it. Giving you a topic earlier would enable you to produce that. I also wish to thank wholeheartedly the financiers who facilitated this meeting. Thank you, and I will be Oliver Twist. In the future, I will know where to run. So when I knock, please don't say you are disturbing me. So finally, as I thank you for your sitting, I know we have got to go home. I would wish you a safe journey home, but don't leave before taking the tea. I know we are going into a traffic jam. I don't want anybody to collapse of hunger. Have the last fueling as we leave this room. So on behalf of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, I thank you all, and I say all this for God and my country.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to our guest of honor, Honorable Opoloto Kasai. Thank you very much, Honorable, for rendering me irrelevant. You said all the things I was supposed to say. I'm even wondering if I'm going to get paid at the end of the day. Yeah? But thank you so much. I'll be coming to you for my allowance, sir. But ladies and gentlemen, just to echo what Honorable has said, we also have gift bags. Please pass by just to appreciate that you spent the day with us. On behalf of the entire team from GIZ and the ministry, we'd like to thank you very much for taking time out to collaborate, to be able to share ideas and to have dialogue, to be able to change Uganda from its energy position for the better. Thank you very much. God bless and good night.